Hey crew, it's Pitt and I'm back with some more Esoterica. Today we're diving back into the works of Carl Jung. This is Mysterium, Conjunctionis. We are reading aloud and discussing as we go along the various points brought to light by the text. It is not the format for everyone, but people do find value in it, so you are more than welcome to tag along as we continue our exploration. Before we begin, however, if you are unfamiliar with me, any of my unconventional beliefs, or if at any point in time I lose you in terminology, there will be several playlists linked up in the corner up above, in the box down below, along with the original source material and the link for my book where I teach you to do magic and live responsibly, and the links to get in contact or support the channel directly so that you can get a better understanding of who I am and why I say the things that I do. With that being said, we are going to dive in and continue our exploration of the Mysterium Conjunctionis with Chapter 5, Part 4. The meaning of the alchemical procedure. Thus, Dorn describes the secret of the second stage of conjunction. To the modern mind, such contrivances of thought will seem like nebulous products of a dreaming fancy. So, in a sense, they are. For this reason, they lend themselves to decipherment by the method of complex psychology. In his attempt to make the obviously confused situation clearer, Dorn involved himself in a discussion of the ways and means for producing the quintessence, which was evidently needed for uniting the unio mentalis with the body. We will pause here and point out, if you have not been following along, you may not know this, but we have discovered along the way that Dorn knew what he was talking about. Right? Now, I say that because I have written a book and I have found a process by which I have become enlightened. Right now, become enlightenment is a big term, right? But I am at least on the path. I don't claim to be a master of anything, but I am at least an adept. I have healed myself physically in 4 ways, right? My back, my throat, my shoulder, and my leg. I've healed myself mentally with great result. And Dorn has relayed information which comports with what I already believe, confirmation bias acknowledged. What else we have discovered in this was that Jung has not, or did not, pass through the final barrier. He did not assume upon himself the final steps. And so he doesn't understand what Dorn is saying. He can recognize intrinsically that Dorn is relaying a truth, but he doesn't know what to do with it because he doesn't have the key to unlock it. Now, he's about to try. He is about to try to take the symbology by which Dorn has relayed true things and to unlock them with the wrong key. That will be evident as we go through, but I want to acknowledge it here before we get there because it is almost certainly what's about to happen, right? Dorn has some stuff, and it comports almost exactly with the things that I wrote in my book, because this is how I healed myself. What is contained in this book, will get you at least on the path. Now, there may be other things that help, right? I have picked up some things along the way. Since the book has been written, I've had clarification about energy manipulation through the hands. That's not included in the book because I didn't have that then. I have picked up dowsing. That's not included in the book because I didn't have that then. It will probably be in the second edition. It's one of the reasons why it is taking so long to get that done. There is some information that I'm wanting to add into the book. But what's in here right now, with all of the misspellings and the misclassifications, still can get you where you need to go. It is in comportment with what Dorn is saying. It is internal reflection and physical manifestation through the manipulation of the electromagnetics that is creation, that is the Holy Spirit. Jung does not have that understanding. Dorn did. Back to the text. One naturally asks oneself how this alchemical procedure enters into it at all. The unio mentalis is so patently a spiritual and moral attitude that one cannot doubt its psychological nature. To our way of thinking, there is a physicality to it. That is why it is couched in the alchemy language. It is the unification of body, mind, and soul, right? Or body, spirit, and soul. It is the unification of the three. It is the conjunction. That is what happens, but it's not in the physical alchemy. It's not in the alembics and retorts and calcinators and mortars and pestles. That's not where you're going to find it. You're going to find it in the internal reflection, which is the language, like they had to use the language of alchemy because the church would have killed them if they used practical terminology. To our way of thinking, this immediately sets up a dividing wall between the psychic and chemical processes. For us, the two things are incommensurable. That is because you have not taken the step. You haven't gone there. But they were not so for the medieval mind. It knew nothing of the nature of chemical substances and their combination. It saw only enigmatic substances which, united with one another, inexplicably brought forth equally mysterious new substances. In this profound darkness, the alchemist's fantasy had free play and could playfully combine the most inconceivable things. It could act without restraint and in so doing, betray itself without being aware of what was happening. The free-ranging psyche of the adept used chemical substances and processes as a painter uses colors to shape out the images of his fancy. If Dorn, in order to describe the union of the unio mentalis with the body, reaches out for his chemical substances and implements, this only means that he was illustrating his fantasies by chemical procedures. He was couching his language so that the church would not kill him. That is another thing that Jung just doesn't get. For this purpose, he chose the most suitable substances, just as the painter chooses the right colors. Honey, for instance, had to go into the mixture because of its purifying quality. We talked about honey in the last video. I'm not going to do it in this one. As a Paracelsus, Dorn knew from the writings of the master is a big word, what high praises he had heaped upon it, calling it the sweetness of the earth, the resin of the earth, which permeates all growing things. The Indian spirit, which is turned by the influence of summer into a corporeal spirit. Footnote 94. Lohmann's Apothecarium. Now, we have also discovered that Paracelsus did not have the information. Dorn had more information than Paracelsus, even though he used Paracelsus as a foundational point. The understanding that we have gotten from Paracelsus, and I have not done the study of Paracelsus by himself, but the information that we have received from him has not been all that reliable. Dorn, however, has been. Now, honey, I did go off on a whole tangent in the last one about honey being a wonderful thing. It is. These are all understandable. Sweetness of earth, resin of earth, fine. The Indian spirit's a little bit wild for me, right? That's not going to be feathers. That's going to be dots. Which is turned by the influence of summer into a corporeal spirit. That is obviously an allegory for something that I just don't have a key for, I guess. Thereby, the mixture acquired the property not only of eliminating impurities, but of changing spirit into body. Let's go ahead and hit that. There is psychedelic honey, right? This is the thing. I don't know how prevalent it is everywhere, but at least in some places, there is honey that will let you see things. That can be part of the enlightenment process. I do not recommend it, right? You can release the same chemicals naturally through meditative practices and flexation of your interior muscles. If you open the doors with chemicals, you are more than likely not prepared for what is on the other side of those doors. You can absolutely open those doors with psychotropics. You will almost certainly not be prepared for what is on the other side, so I do not recommend it for that reason alone. Right, there are entities. Those entities reside on the other side of those doors. If you are not prepared mentally for the other side of those doors, you can become possessed. You can go down a lot of really bad roads. And so you should not be arbitrarily using psychedelics, and you probably shouldn't be using them at all. And And once again, I'm not telling you don't. I'm telling you it's probably a bad idea. Right. Not only of eliminating impurities, but of changing spirit into body, and in view of the proposed conjunction of the spirit and body, this seemed a particularly promising sign. To be sure, the sweetness of the earths was not without its dangers, as we have seen. The honey could change into a deadly poison. And again, that psychedelic, right? It is entirely possible that you have, like honey is derived from flowers, right? Some flowers are poisonous to people, belladonnas in particular. And so it is entirely possible that there was a supply of belladonnas or some such that led to the honey being quite literally dangerous. It does not just naturally change into a deadly poison on its own, however, right? It is one of the purest substances on the entire earth. And so if it is not made in such a way that it contains poison, it will almost certainly not change into poison, at least by itself. Now, you can change it into something else. That is possible. Extracts and elixirs are a thing. Back to the text. According to Paracelsus, it contains tartarum, which, as the name implies, has to do with Hades. Further, tartarum is a calcined Saturn. We looked up tartar last time, and consequently has affinities with this malefic planet. For another ingredient, Dorn takes Caledonia, which cures eye diseases and is particularly good for night blindness, and even heals the spiritual benightedness, affliction of the soul, and melancholy madness. Alright, I'm going to look this up. That is not what I'm looking for. That is not dealing with the flower. Right? A Benedictine Hermites. I'm looking for the flower. Does they not have the reference for the other thing? Normally they have something at the top. For the islands. Alright, well, it doesn't have anything about the actual flower. I'm interested in the benightedness, right? The affliction of the soul, the melancholy madness. That does imply that there is some type of a psychotropic effect, right? Now, we have come to the conclusion, or are coming to the conclusion, that the current medicines that we use to deal with this is not just ineffective, but counterproductive in a variety of ways. The current medicines that you get from your doctor for depression and anxiety are actually quite detrimental to your health. That is where the science is leading. I am not a scientist. I am not making the statement. I am relaying the information. And so if there is a natural something for that, that is something that is interesting for me because I am a healer, not necessarily because I need it for myself, right? Night blindness either. I have the ability to see at night. Not everybody does, apparently, but there are varying degrees of effectiveness of it. I can see fairly well, right? Not in complete darkness, but if there is the slightest of light sources, I do very well. It may be because I have heterochromia, which is two different colors of eyes. Both of them are light. Like I have a green and I have a gold. And while that is hazel, there is a distinction of the heterochromia, which is two separate pigmentations. I have that. I have hazel and heterochromia, which is exceedingly rare. I mean, one of those other things that might be the reasons. And so, for me, the night blindness is whatever. I mean, it doesn't really matter. For the most part, I can see. But the melancholy, that can be useful for other people, so I am interested in that. The benightedness so feared by the adepts. It protects against thunderstorms. An example, outbursts of effect. Now, if it is dealing with the affliction of the soul, like this part right here was not in the yesterday, right? We dealt with this yesterday, talking about the gold and even the night blindedness and stuff. The thunderstorms there was implied to be literal storms. That doesn't work, right? But if it is indeed a tonic against melancholia, then it would help with the thunderstorms that are outbursts of affect, right? Not like literal thunderstorms. Picking a plant and eating it is not going to change a thunderstorm. But if it is an internal storm and it is something that deals with depression, then yeah, it is a precious ingredient because its yellow flowers symbolize the philosophical gold, the highest treasure. What is more important here, it draws the humidity, the soul, out of Mercurius. Footnote 95. The essence, right? Now we talked about honey does pull the essence out of things. I don't know about this other plant. Now Mercurius also, by the way, is both the masculine and the feminine properties. It is separate from Mercury, and even what was the other one? There's Mercury, Mercurius, and I lost the word. There were three of them. They are all three completely separate things, even though they sound remarkably the same. It draws the humidity or the soul. Now, his understanding of the soul and my understanding of the soul are not quite the same, right? There is the soul, which is the individualized piece of God that makes the decisions for the 5D navigation device, which is the temple. It is enabled through the spirit. There is a tendency in this particular research to confuse soul and spirit, right? Soul is the individualized part that makes the decisions, the ego. The spirit is the part that allows those decisions to happen, right? That is, in both intrinsic thing and external. The spirit is quite literally everything in existence, not you in particular, but you are created from it. All right. It therefore assists the spiritualization of the body and makes visible the essence of Mercurius, the supreme chthonic spirit. But Mercurius is also the devil. Footnote 96. The spirit Mercurius. Right, we've talked extensively about it. Fall back to sulfur. If it is confusing, but it is both the light and the dark, the creative and destructive, the masculine and the feminine, the positive and the negative. That is Mercurius. As an entity conceptualized, it is both the light and the dark. Perhaps that is why the section which Lagnius defines the nature of Mercurius is entitled Dominus Vobiscum. Footnote 97. That is just a reference to where it came from. In addition, the plant Mercurialis, that's the other one, is indicated. Like the Hermeric magic herb moly, it was found by Hermes himself and must therefore have magical effects. It is particularly favorable to the conjunctio because it occurs in male and female form and thus can determine the sex of a child about to be conceived. That is not true. That is not going to be true. Right? I mean, I say that, and there are definitely things that can be used for divination, right? I have picked up dowsing. I am able to divine some things. Now, I have not tested that with a whole lot of, speculations, right? I've tested things that I already knew the answer of, so there's a lot less of the confirmation of the dowsing. That's one of the reasons why I have not made a video yet. I don't have objective confirmation. I am still working on subjective confirmation, but in a subjective manner, I have learned some things. Tarot was the same way. When we did an exploration of tarot, I backed off of that for reasons of the channel, not because of the tarot. Right? I'm trying to specialize and feed into the algorithm. Right? We may wind up doing tarot on another channel. If you're unaware, I do have another channel. It is Infinite Integrations. I haven't uploaded in there in like 2 years, but that may be changing. Right? If this picks up in the way that it should, we'll start doing tarot over there. All of that to say that there are divination procedures, right? They are, for the most part, dependent upon predetermined things. Like tarot is a whole deck of predetermined symbols, and it can determine what the energies coming in is through the use of these predetermined symbols to give you an idea of what you are looking for. I've had some fairly objective confirmation of the tarot, so I do speak about it a little bit more definitively than I do with the dowsing. Dowsing is still quite subjective. And so when I say that it can't happen, there is a possibility that it works. It is just not a very likely one. It is probably not that you can stick dog's mercury into a vagina and it tell you whether the male or female is in there. I find that exceedingly hard to believe. That's not to say that it is impossible, but it stretches credulity quite a bit. It is bordering on incredulous, right? The inability to believe it, right? I just do not see how it could possibly be. But it is a predetermined signal. It's no different than heads or tails. So, Mercurius himself was said to be generated from an extract of it. Now, the only way that that is possible, right, that is the personification of a force. And so the only way that that is possible is if you have taken this herb and it didn't tell you the sex of something, but instead triggered something that opened a door, and that door allowed you to see, right? That is the only way that you could possibly say that Mercurius was to be generated from an extract of it. It has to be psychedelic. It has to open the door. Whether or not that is an effective means of opening the door is definitely up for debate, but those doors can be opened by substances. I just do not recommend it. Generated from an extract of it. That spirit which acts as a mediator, because he is the Utrisque capax, capable of either. Once again, Mercurius is the personification of both, and therefore he can be either. And savior of the macrocosm, and is therefore best able to unite the above with the below. I don't disagree. Right? The process is uniting the below trinity with the as above trinity through the philosopher's stone, which can be symbolized as Mercurialis. Right? Mercury is this white sphere and this black sphere, or Mercurius is the white sphere and the black sphere. Both in conjunction, both capable of either. And so it works. In his ithyphallic form as Hermes Kalinios, he contributes the attractive power of sexuality, which plays a great role in the Conjunctionis symbolism. Once again, I will point out that the masculine part is not going to be the attractive part. Right? Attractive means that it takes within. Right? Magnets attract to them. They repel from them. So the thing that goes into it is not going to be the attractive part. The part that takes into itself is going to be the attractive part. For me, the feminine is the part that takes within itself. The masculine is the part that goes into. And so this, for me, is not going to work. It might for you. Footnote 98 is from the spirit Mercurius. We'll be back at 100. Like honey, he is dangerous because of his possibly poisonous effect, for which reason it naturally seemed advisable to our author to add rosemary to the mixture as an elixipharmic antidote, and a synonym for Mercurius, aqua permanens, perhaps on the principle that like cures like. It may be possible, right? I do not discount the effects of rosemary. Rosemary has a great deal of beneficial effects. It may be possible that it has a nullification effect for a poison. I do not know that. I would not recommend following this advice, right? If the one substance is dangerous, it may be that adding something to it makes it less dangerous. It may not. Dorn could hardly resist the temptation to exploit the alchemical allusion to rosmarinus, Sidu. In agreement with the ecclesiastical symbolism, there was in alchemy too a dew of grace, the aqua vitae, the perpetual, permanent, and two-meaninged divine water, and sulfur water. Once again, I will point out that sulfur is the representative for the spirit. It is the representative for fire. Earth is the representative for your 5D navigation device. Salt is another one. There is the soul, and the soul is represented by Mercury. It is also represented by air. Water is also a representative of the spirit. Now, to me, it is a less effective one because spirit is quite literally all exchange of heat, right? All change, all motion, all of that is an exchange of heat. Me breathing out words is an exchange of heat. Thinking is an exchange of heat. All of those is a manifestation of the spirit. Any instance of change whatsoever, even one thought into another. All of that is the logos. Every single bit of it. And it is represented by fire, which is sulfur. But you can also represent it by water through an analogy that is understandable, because when you do the things that I talk about in here, it is like moving water. Whenever you move the energies up, you literally feel what feels like water flowing up your spine. That is both an internal feeling and an external feeling. If you're in a pool, right, like a swimming pool, right, and you get down into horse stance like so many of us guys do, and you start making punches, right? You punch in the water. You feel the resistance of the water, and then your hand makes a wave, right? You can see it go out in front of you. But there is also a wave that is created by the movement of your arm that is an absence. That movement that is an absence, you can feel that too, right? You feel the water that comes off the front, but you also feel the current that comes from the absence, and it goes up your arm, right? It feels like a sleeve going up your arm. That is the same feeling that you feel when you're removing the waters. And so it is understandable why they use the analogy of the water. I don't particularly like it because fire is better. But it is understandable, and it is used quite often. That is what this is talking about. It is talking about moving the energies. The divine water and the sulfur water is exactly the same thing. Exactly the same thing. And it has nothing to do with corporeality, right? It's not talking about the physical water. It's not talking about physical sulfur in water, right? You might wind up in trouble if you mix sulfur in water. There is an acid created that way. And so what is being described here means literally what it says. It says two meaning. That is not true. It is perpetual, permanent divine water or sulfur water. But those two meanings are exactly the same. The water of life, which is exactly the same as this word, aqua vitae. Aqua vitae is quite literally divine water, right, or water of life. All right. The water was also called aqua pontica, seawater, which would be salt water. Salt is the earth. If you combine the earth with the spirit, you get seawater, or simply sea. This was the great sea over which the alchemist sailed in his mystic peregrination, guided by the heart of Mercurius to the heavenly North Pole, to which nature herself points with the magnetic compass. Holy fuck! We've got to get to Dorn. 99. See Psychology and Alchemy, also Eon. Right? The great sea over which the alchemist sailed, that is the void. Guided by the heart, that is the stone. The heart of Mercurius, the stone, the philosopher's stone, the thing that binds the as below with the as above, to the heavenly North Pole, which nature herself points with a magnetic compass. What is that word right there? Electromagnetic manipulation? Yeah, I'm in agreement. It was also the bath of regeneration, the spring rain which brings forth the vegetation, and the aqua doctrinae. I'm in agreement. Another alexipharmic is the lily, but it is much more than that. Its juice is mercurial and even incombustible, a sure sign of its incorruptible and eternal nature. This is confirmed by the fact that the lily was conceived to be mercurius and the quintessence itself, the noblest thing that human meditation can reach. Once again, I am in exact, complete agreement. The red lily stands for the male and the white for the female in the conjunctio. And I will once again point out that this base is red. Beneath that is infrared, which can be mistaken for black. Now, I am of the opinion that the bottom down here, that is the feminine, that is the void, that is the black. The top is the masculine. It is the penetrative light, the infinitesimal point of light, and it is symbolized by white. They see it as white and red. I see it as white and black. That is really the only difference. The divine pair that unite in the high-risk gamos. This big circle right here is meant to symbolize the unification of the white and the black. That is what it is meant to symbolize. I couldn't do it in the way that it should have been done, which would have made it look like a checkerboard, and still been able to show that the white and the black circle was in there. Right? That's why it's not looking like a checkerboard. The lily is therefore a true gamenymus in the Paracelsian sense. Finally, the mixture must not lack the thing that really keeps body and soul together: human blood, which was regarded as the seat of the soul. Footnote 100. So too in Paracelsus, where the soul, Melusine, lives in the blood. I cannot make an argument either way about that. Now, I believe that the spirit resides in your nervous system, right? The primary residence by which it activates within yourself is through the nerves. When you make a decision to wiggle your fingers, the spirit sends an electrical signal through your spinal cord, down your nervous system, to your fingers, which activates the flesh. It's not literally your soul doing so. It's you choosing, and then the spirit carrying it out. And so for me, the spirit resides in the spinal fluid, right? The fluid that encapsulates the spine. It is a heavy salt. It is possible that the soul resides in the blood, but I find that exceedingly difficult to believe. I do believe that the soul's primary seat of residence is going to be in the heart. You can, through deliberate effort, move it. Some people, their consciousness resides in a different chakra. I know that sounds a little bit weird, right? You're like, we should all reside in the same place, but that's just simply not true. The consciousness, which is the part that makes the decisions, is somewhat adjustable. Generally speaking, most people operate either from the heart or the stomach. If you are, for instance, consumed with rage, you will reside in the base. If you have been in a state by which you were enraged, right? Someone provoked you to such a point that you blacked out or lost control, there is a red tinge that will come over you, and there is a sense of you inside of yourself lower in your understanding. Some people reside in that lowerness, right? They are overly aggressive, short man syndrome type of thing. Now, I'm not picking on short people. I've got a lot of them in my family. And so, there is a tendency for people who are stuck in wrath to have their consciousness really reside close to the base chakra. Now, where exactly that is, I don't know, right? These are things that are in the realm of speculation. It is possible that it is blood, but I just don't think so. Whenever you are consumed by lust, you're hanging around your sacral. If you're consumed by consumption, you're hanging around your gluttony, your stomach. Right? If you're consumed with greed, you're in your heart. Right? You are loving the things a little bit too much. All of that is to say that you can move your consciousness, the ability to perceive this is something that I do on a regular basis whenever I am doing the work, right? The pulling of the energies. I am literally moving my consciousness, which for me resides here, all the way down. It is a process by which my perception of things alters. And then I move it up, step by step, through my body, focusing upon the colors and the rotations, feeling the roughness and the smoothness, doing all of the things that got me where I am. That is an intrinsic part of it to me, right? There is no separation of the moving of the consciousness and the moving of the waters. Those things occur simultaneously. If you are doing that part, right? Like you can move without moving the water. You can move your consciousness without moving the water. You can move the water without moving your consciousness. But it is the same procedure for both. It is more about the focus of yourself upon the thing and doing it. And so, all of that was just to argue that I don't know that it is in the blood, right? I really don't know. It may be that it is the entire body, right? That is entirely possible. It may be that it resides in your pineal gland, which is the place by which the signals are sent out through your spinal cord to all of the rest of the things. That piezoelectrics that sparks on that little bitty piece, that does something. Alright, back to the text. It was a synonym for the red tincture, a preliminary stage of the lapis. Red is going to be towards the base. Moreover, it was an old established magic charm, a ligament for binding the soul either to God or the devil, and hence a powerful medicine for uniting the unio mentalis with the body. I will point out once again, we'll use the pen because this is a good analogy, right? It's easier than a coin. On one side of this is the ego, on the other side of this is the unconscious, right? You make more unconscious decisions than you do conscious. You are more often in your unconsciousness than you are in your consciousness, unless you are intentional. This end, your consciousness, makes the decisions for your 5D navigation device. This end gives you recommendations. This end will tell you, you shouldn't do that, or you should do that. This end will say, I should do this, or I should not do this. You make the decisions based upon the recommendation that you get from this end. But this end is not intrinsically good. It is both good and evil. There are two voices. Both of them are the exact same voice, but whichever one you feed is the one that you will hear. And so you can indeed bind your soul, the part that makes the decisions, to either God, the voice that tells you to do the right thing, or the devil, the voice that tells you to do the wrong thing. Both of those are the same voice. It is giving you the same option in two ways. You get to choose which one you will feed. Whichever one you feed is the one that will speak the loudest. So if you are feeding the positive loop, the positive voice becomes louder. If you are feeding the negative loop, the negative loop becomes louder. And so therefore, you should make sure that you are aligning yourself in the way that you want to. Now, I'm not going to tell you which way to align. I am aligned towards the betterment of humankind. I hope that you are as well, but that is not my decision. The admixture of human blood seems to me unusual if one assumes that the recipe was meant literally. If you are using literal human blood in alchemy or magic, you are doing it wrong. Let me make no equivocation about that. If you are using blood in the process of a magic spell, you're doing it wrong. And unless it is within yourself, right? You can direct yourself and visualize that energy moving as blood. That is fine. But if you cut yourself and sprinkle it anywheres, that is blood magic. That is a bad idea. Not that you can't do it, not that it is not effective. It is a bad idea. We move here on uncertain ground. Although the vegetable ingredients are obviously indicated because of their symbolic value, we still do not know exactly how far the symbolism had a magical quality. Hopefully I have helped with that. I understand the thing that Jung did not. If it had, then the recipe must be taken literally. In the case of blood, increased doubts arise because either it was simply a synonym for the aqua permanens and could then be practically any liquid, or else real blood was meant. And then we must ask where this blood came from. Could it have been the adepts? The problem seems to me not entirely irrelevant, since Dorn in his Philosophia Meditativa was greatly influenced, as we shall see, by the Sabaean Liber Catorum, which he obviously knew, although he did not mention it. The Sabaeans were reputed to have sacrificed human victims for magical purposes. Footnote 101. See the passage... Oh wait, we missed 100. So too in Paracelsus, where the soul Melusine lives in the blood. Did we miss that? We might have said it. Okay, 101. The passage from Firhurs de Alum of Muhammad ibn Ishaq al-Nadim in Quolason, Die Sesabira Udur Sesabimus, describing the maceration of a man's body in oil and borax. The head of the corpse was then used as an oracle. See also the report by Lawrence von de Post in Transformation Symbolism in the Mass. And I will state again with no equivocation, if you are using sacrificed human victims or even just their blood, you are doing it wrong. You are misaligned. It will reverberate upon you. This is the first thing that I have seen from Dorn that did not comport with me at all. The Sabaeans were reported to have sacrificed human victims for magical purposes, and even today human blood is used for signing pacts with the devil. It is very vitally important to point this out right here at this juncture. If you go back to Exodus, right, and you look and see what the actual covenant was, you will notice that the patriarchs, the heads of the 12 tribes, plus Moses and Aaron, signed a covenant in blood, which was then placed into the Ark of the Covenant, which then empowered them to do a lot of things. Even today, human blood is used for signing pacts with the devil. It is also not so long since tramps were made drunk and quickly immured on a building site in order to make the foundation safe. What? What? What does immured mean? To confine within, or as if within walls, imprison, to entomb in a wall. Do not do that. Do not go into a place where that was done. I'm no equivocation. Blood magic is bad. It doesn't matter what it was used for. Wow. Wow. A magical recipe of the 16th century therefore might easily have used human blood as a pars pro toto. The whole mixture was then joined with the heaven of the red or white wine, or of Tartarus. The kalium, as we have seen, was the product of the alchemical procedure, which in this case consisted in first distilling the philosophic wine. Thereby, the soul and spirit were separated from the body and repeatedly sublimated until they were free from all phlegm. An example, from all liquid that contained no more spirit. Footnote 102. See the description of the caput mortum in Christianos. Black and soulless and dead, and so, to speak, unbreathing. Birth lot. Phlegm also has a moral connotation. So likewise thy wisdom and our hearts expel from them the phlegm, the corrupt choler and boiling blood, and lead us in the ways of the blessed. Allegory is sapientium from the Theatrica Chemicum. The residue, the black earth, is the ash, of which the Tractus Mercurius says, despise not the ashes, for in them is the diadem, the ash of things that endure. Again, from the Theatrica Chemicum. We are almost certainly going there next. The residue, called the corpus, body, was reduced to ashes in the most vehement fire, and, hot water being added, was changed into a lixivium asperimum, a very sharp lye. You can also make that from borax, which was then carefully poured off of the ashes by tilting the vessel. Right, now lye is a concentration of lime. Right, borax is a substitute for lime in concentration. The residue was treated in the same way again until in the end the no asperitas remained in the ashes. The lye was filtered and then evaporated in a glass vessel. What was left over was tartarum nostrum, or wine stone, calculus vini, the natural salt of all things. This salt can be dissolved in tartaric water in a damp and cool place on a slab of marble. Footnote 103. There is a man in Marmoris Tartaris, a very hard stone, Roland. Bowls of marble or serpentine are said to give protection against poison. Know also that the spirit is enclosed in a house of marble. Open therefore the passages that the dead spirit may come forth. I will point out that there are various acids, right? Sulfuric acid is made by mixing sulfur and water. There are others, hydrochloric acid, phosphoric acids. All of these things come from the chemical processes that these people used. Glass will encase most of these acids, not all of them. The ones that glass will not encase can be encased by stone. There are a few of the acids which will interact with the stone, but for the most part, marble in specificity, andesite, any of the harder of the stones are fairly resistant to most acids, not all of them, son. There is no universal, this stone is against all acids. Some acid will eat any stone, right? But if it eats this stone, then it doesn't eat that stone. And so, for the most part, you can encase in very hard stone, marble, or serpentine, which is a version of marble, to protect against the effects of the acid. If you were to place sulfuric acid into wood or something like that, it would almost certainly give off vapors that wouldn't harm you. If you put it in the stone, those vapors are much less likely to occur. That is a explanation for this. I don't know that it is the explanation, but it does fit. Alright. The tartaric water was the quintessence of the philosophic and even of ordinary wine, and was then subjected to the above-mentioned rotation. As in a centrifuge, the pure was separated from the impure, and the liquid of the color of the air floated to the top. This was the calum. I have detailed this process in order to give the reader a direct impression of the alchemical procedure. One can hardly suppose that all of this is merely poppycock, for Dorn was a man who obviously took things seriously. So far as one can judge, he meant what he said, and he himself worked in the laboratory. Of course, we do not know what success he had chemically, but we are sufficiently informed about the results of his meditative exertions. The calum, for Dorn, was a celestial substance hidden in man, the secret truth, the sum of virtue, the treasure which is not eaten into by moths nor devoured by thieves. In the world's eyes, it is the cheapest thing, but to the wise more worthy of love than precious stones and gold, a good that passeth not away and is taken hence after death. Footnote 104. Dorn, from the Meditatio, obviously, therefore, the immortal part of man. Yeah. The reader will gather from this that the adept was describing nothing less than the kingdom of heaven on earth. Yes, I think that Dorn was not exaggerating, but that he wanted to communicate to his public something very important to him. Yeah, he believed in the necessity of the alchemical operation, as well as in its success. He was convinced that the quintessence was needed for the preparation of the body. Footnote 105. Therefore, for the preparation of a good disposition of the body, we make use of the spagyric medicine. I agree. And that the body was so much improved by this universal medicine that the conjunctio with spirit and soul could be consummated. Yes. I've been there. I know exactly what he is talking about. Yes. If the production of the kalim from wine is a hair-raising chemical fantasy, our understanding ceases altogether when the adept mixes this heaven with his Geminiminus and other magical herbs. But if the one consists mainly of fantasies, so does the other. This makes it interesting. Fantasies always mean something when they are spontaneous. The question then arises, what is the psychological meaning of the procedure? And that is going to bring us to the end of part 4. Hopefully I brought a little bit of enlightenment and not too much confusion to a somewhat difficult series of topics. I understand I hold some unconventional beliefs, and I do have a tendency to step on toes when I relay those. It is not intentional, but it is not something that I apologize for. This process, I'm fully convinced that Dorn was at least on the road, that he at least knew what he was talking about, even if he didn't relay the information in the same way that I would. It is damn close. It is so close that I am in agreement with most of it. Now, the blood part of it, I am not. It is understandable why it would have been done. There was a much lesser degree of refinement in humanity in the days of Dorn. There was much less care for the entirety of the living world. There was much less understanding of a lot of the intrinsics. Blood magic is effective. I don't want to act or to intimate that it is not. You can perform rituals with blood, hair, semen, spit, flesh, any of those things, and it, if done correctly, will be effective. But even if you do it correctly, no matter if it is done perfectly, if you are using any of those substances, you will get an effect back. That is a guarantee. I don't give out guarantees over here like candy. That is a guarantee. If you are using blood, spit, semen, flesh, hair, any physical part of any physical human, yourself included, you will receive reverberations and you will not like it. That is a guarantee that I give to you. You are free to do whatever you want. You can go out right now and kill somebody. I cannot stop you. I can merely advise you against it. I can tell you that it is a bad idea. And if you are right here, I can physically try to stop you. But if you are determined, I won't be able to do so. You are the determinant for what you want to do. I'm not trying to give you information that is only what I want you to do. I am trying to give you information that is true, whether or not I want you to do it. Right? I don't want anyone performing blood magic. I believe that every single instance of that has turned out terribly. Every single instance that we have an example of that is written down, it is verifiable that it has turned out horribly. Every single one of them. There is not an exception to that rule. I have not run across a single instance where blood magic brought about benefits for anyone. Most of the time, if blood magic is involved, it has a negative connotation anyway. And even if you don't use blood or any of the other substances, and you are casting negative spells, it is going to reverberate as well. You will feel it. It will hit you. It'll hit them, right? They will get their reward, but you will get one that is magnified. The result that comes back to you comes back according to the law of response. You can play with that if you want to. I absolutely will not, and I will absolutely call it out on every single instance. I don't care who you are. I don't care how long something's been written down. I don't care. I am here to give information, and some of that information is going to be bad. Right? Bad is it not as it in incorrect information, but bad is in negatively aligned. You are free to use that information. I can only recommend against it, and I cannot recommend hard enough. Don't do blood magic. Don't do it. Don't do it. It's completely unnecessary. 100% unnecessary. There is no part of it that is necessary. I said that 3 times for a reason. If you like what I'm doing over here, let me know down below. Give me a like, a share, a follow, throw me a comment whether you agree or disagree with anything that was said. Put it in the box down below, and if it remains respectful, it'll remain up. If you really like what I'm doing, hit me with that super thanks. Consider joining for a membership, picking up a copy of my book where I teach you to do the simple things responsibly, or consulting me directly or supporting the channel through the links provided down below. To the crew, thanks for hanging out. I appreciate every single minute that you are here with me, and I am praying for you every single day. Until next time, I love you. God loves you. You are perfect, whole, and complete just the way that you are. And this has been Pittstake. Peace.